Welcome back to Unraveled Game Thoughts. I'm redoing my top 22, my top 10 games from 2022. Going back over them, got a few updates, shifting some things around. Had a chance to play a few games that I have not yet played. There are still some games pretty, that would probably be significant for me to get a chance to play, but I just still haven't had an opportunity to play them. And if you hear some background noise, I apologize. I'm in my trailer trying to prevent the unanticipated noise of my whole family entering my house on my lunch break while I'm recording. So going for the isolating in the trailer. And if they send me a text asking me where I am, then I'll have to interrupt to do that. But let's move on to the top 10 games from 2022 adjusted list. Some of these are going to be pretty much the same. I'll kind of talk a little bit about what's changed, what's fallen off as we go through the list. But let's start with number 10, and I'm on this is just the BGG page here, rated by Geek Rating, so you can kind of see some of the general ratings here. I tried to take out the expansions. I should probably note that I am not discussing expansions. So a game like Wingspan Asia, I love Wingspan Asia. That is a fantastic expansion for Wingspan. If I was including expansions, that would be in my top 10. But it's I guess you could argue maybe there's some standaloneness to it, but it's an expansion, so I'm not including any expansion material per se in my list. Now, sometimes because there's a good expansion to a base game that makes the base game better, that can improve things. But in general, I would not count that. Now, something like Clank Catacombs, I will include that because that's more of a standalone. It is not something you add to the base game. You just play. It's like another version of Clank. So that I would consider. Frosthaven is not an expansion to Gloomhaven. It is just, it's like a whole different game. So, without further ado, let's start with number 10. Last year, I don't know, I won't talk about last year's just yet. So, my number 10 this year, or rather now, after reassessing, is Sea Salt and Paper. I've been playing this on BGA, and I kind of didn't like it very much at first. It was like, it's kind of the only thing I liked about it was the origami art on the cards for a while, but now I've played it probably 12 to 15 times. I'm starting to get a better grasp of how the game works, because it's got, every turn, you either draw a card from the discard pile that is there, or you're going to draw 2 cards from the deck, pick one to keep that your opponent won't see, and then you're going to put the other one in one of the 2 discard piles face up. Then your opponent is going to then get to pick one of the, either from the discard pile or from the deck. There's a limited number of cards in the deck. If the deck runs out, round ends, everybody has to score, but you're kind of in this weird, I don't want to call it a race for points, but the first person to get the 7 points gets an option. I can end now, get my points, and if I am leading in points, then I get to also score all the like color cards in my hand. And there are, there's different card types, like a swimmer, origami swimmer, an origami boat, origami fish, origami shark. There's several of them, and each type of card scores differently depending on what it's paired with or in combination with other cards like it. They also have colors. So if you get a certain bonus at the end of the round, you get to score the color bonus, which is, however many of that color you have in your hand. If you don't win, you don't get to score your color bonus. So not win, but like there's just different dynamics. And I think if you lose, you just score your color bonus. I think that's how that works. You do not score the other things, maybe. I'd have to go back and double check the rules. But I'm getting a better grasp of the rules. I know that you get to that 7 points, you get that choice. So you can take your chances, try to get more points by playing another round, or you can end there and hope that you have the most points. And it's got an interesting dynamic gameplay. There's several card types that when paired together you can play them. So most of the time your opponent does not know what you have, but if you play cards, then you get to activate an effect. You might steal one of your opponent's cards blindly. You might grab a card from the top of the deck. You might get to search through one of the discard piles and take a card from there. If you play a card, then your opponent can see what you have, at least to the extent of, I can see they have those cards and colors, and they might be able to surmise a little bit of what you're going for. But sometimes you might want to be balancing what I'm trying to play versus what I'm keeping secret in my hand, so it may not match up exactly the same. It's a good game. I used to have it rated more like a 6.9. I've raised my rating to like a 7.2. And it makes my top 10 for that year. I think this is a game that would travel well and would be fun to play with family. I've never played it with 4 players. I've only ever played it with 2. So I'd love to try it with 4 and see how that works. But Sea Salt and Paper, very cute game. I think it has some good staying power and will be around and for a while. I forget what its overall rank is, 14, 17, so it's gotten up there. And I don't, if you're watching one of these videos and you're not familiar with the BGG rankings, 14, 17 is not a low ranking, given that there are like 35,000 some odd games ranked on BGG. So this is still fairly high. Until something gets below something like the 3,000 mark, I kind of consider it in the upper echelon of games, given that, you know, BGG rankings are also sort of a popularity contest to some degree. It's not like, you know, certified judges ranking these games. So anyway, that is my number 10. Number 9, and I'll just close these out as I get to them, is Vaalbara. This one is overall ranked 3,453. I was really surprised this was in the 3,000 range and not higher than that. I just started playing this game. This is like an easy to find $20 game on Amazon, 2 to 5 players. If you're familiar with Libertalia, Winds of the Galecrest, this is like a simplified version of that, but it is fun. It's got really vibrant art, and we took this with us. We went to visit the Grand Tetons recently, this over the past in the month of June, and I bought this game to take on the trip because we were traveling with another family, and I thought this would be a fun one to bring out. Maybe the kids would like it too, and I think the other folks would enjoy it. I knew we wouldn't have probably 5 players at any one time. I think we might have once, but most of the time it was just 3 or 4 of us playing. But it was a blast. It's quick, it's easy. Does it say the time? 20 minutes. 20 minutes about right. Maybe bordering on 30, but only because you're just thinking through your turn. And the difference between this and Libertalia is everybody has a deck of 12 cards that they start with. Now in Libertalia you have, I think it's 40, and when you set the game up, you're pulling out, you randomly shuffle one of those decks, you draw, I want to say it's 6, and then you're going to look through, everybody else is going to look through the deck and pull their 6 of the same number. So in Libertalia, you start the game with all the same number. In Vaalbara, it's 12 cards, everybody shuffles their deck, you draw 5, so you're starting with 5, but you don't know the 5 that other people have. You do have a player aid card that has a list of all the numbers and what they do, like 1 through 12. So you can have an idea of what are the different numbers that people have, and everybody's cards trigger the same way. You're going to play a card 1 through 12, and everybody picks one, reveals simultaneously, and just like Libertalia, lower to higher numbers is going to go in that order. So starting with the player with the lowest number, they play their card, they activate their card, they do what the card does, and then there is a land. There are land cards. There are 6 different types of land cards. They each score points in a different way, and you're going to have land cards laid out equal to the number of players. So this is another thing different than Libertalia. In Libertalia, you have those treasures that you can go and pick up during your journey. And sometimes you don't get a treasure because someone steals it or it gets moved or whatever. In Vaalbara, everyone gets a land every turn. Now, you may not get the land you want, but you're going to get a land from the bottom land row. There's 2 land rows. So you can always kind of see what's coming, and you're going to get, you're going to, when it's your turn, you trigger your card, you pick one of the lands. If you're the last person to go, you're going to get the last land, unless you are doing one of the actions that your character does. And sometimes they can swap a land with the first and second row. They can swap a land with the top card of the deck. There's some different options that the characters themselves do when they're activated. So Vaalbara is a really cool game. I had to include, I couldn't believe it was 3,400 range here. Because we've had so much fun with it, and I really like it. It's very easy to teach. It's very easy to bring out. It's well designed, good player aid. You're just scoring points. Points is all you do. There's not like money in the game. You're just scoring points. By the end of the game, you pretty much just look at your points. There's not a lot of maintenance to the scoring at the end of the game. You have all your points in front of you. The only one piece of maintenance is if you have 5 different land types, you get an extra 5 points. And if you have 6 different land types, all 6, you get another 10 points. And so there's a lot of nice tension in the game with, well, I think that person might play this. What are they going to try to, based on these lands here and what I see in front of them. There's lots of little tension points that are well balanced in this game. So Vaalbara, number 9, great game. Ends up Vaalbara and Sea Salt and Paper both knocked off a couple of games that are now in my runner-up for 2022, but were on my list initially. All right, number 3, game I haven't played yet. It's kind of probably a little weird to put a game on here that I haven't played, but I know the kinds of games I tend to like and enjoy. And I've had several folks that I'm familiar with play this game and tell me how cool it is. So I think this is, if anything, might be likely to go up my list or stay pretty close to right here. But Planet Unknown is a tile laying, kind of a puzzly game. So I love Isle of Cats. I like Feast for Odin. Anytime there's a game that kind of has this, like you're going to put a little bit of a puzzle together in your board to try to score points, I enjoy that. I think that's the Tetraonimo, or however you say that word, for Tetris-like looking tiles. I think this is going to fit into that realm of game. Now, will it be the best one? I don't know about that. I haven't actually gone through and ranked those games, and I really need to play this before I could rank it alongside those games. To determine if I liked it better or the same as or worse than Isle of Cats and those other games that have a tile laying mechanic. But yeah, this looks and sounds very good. I'd love to get a copy of it. It's, I think, with the because they have that rondelle, or not the rondelle, the Lazy Susan included in the game, it's pretty pricey as far as game design goes. It's in the $60 to $70 range, and it might be worth that. It very well, nice trays, this little Lazy Susan, it looks good. And one day maybe I will end up going ahead and ponying that up, but I'd really like to play it first to make sure that it is what I'm looking for in a game, and I think it's worth that much. So we'll see. But Planet Unknown, still number 8. I'm basing that on a lot of feedback from others, but I do think this is one that I will probably enjoy. Number 7. Yep, I'm on 7. And this is actually, surprisingly, fell in exactly the same spot that I had it when I did my first 2022 list, and that's Carnegie. This is a great game. I was fortunate enough to get to purchase it from a buddy of mine, and it's I'd like to play it more often than I get to play it, but it is a little on the complex side, so it's not going to be for a beginning player. But it's a neat. I'm trying to think of how to describe the game. It's not a train game, even though there are train tracks that are kind of more like what do you call them? Not towers, tracks. They're like track. So you think like Teotihuacan, and you have the temple tracks. The trains in this game, I think there's 5 different tracks on the main board, and those are kind of similar to something like a temple track. It's got a little bit of that mechanic, but you're also trying to connect the different areas on the board, and you're going to score points significantly based on how well you do that. And then there's it's the building up your company, and you kind of start with basic company tiles that do all the actions in a very basic way, and you can get new tiles that will accentuate the actions that you already get to start the game with. The first several times I played, I was trying to basically trigger all my stuff all the time, and I think after several plays, you gotta like move to better companies, so you don't necessarily want to trigger everything on your board. You want to trigger those things that are going to give you the best bang for your buck, as far as like, so if I have 2 or 3 that trigger for the same action, maybe I want them all to trigger, but I might want to move my workers to the new company and have them all trigger there. So that's a oversimplified explanation of how those things work, but it's the neat mechanic in this game, or one of the neat mechanics, is you're going to get the same number of turns every game. Each person chooses an action, and everybody's going to get to trigger those departments. So this is one of those games where you're kind of paying attention to what do I think other players are going to do, and how can I set up my company such that when they trigger the things I think they're going to do, I also get to trigger the things I want to do, because it's a little bit of a lead and follow, but everybody's triggering all the things in their company, so there's not a huge benefit to the leader for triggering. Everybody kind of gets the same thing every turn. It's just if you end up in a place where you weren't ready for somebody to take a certain action, they're going to greatly benefit from that action, and maybe you have no people or no money or whatever resource you need at that particular time to do that action, so you can end up with some turns where you're like, I got to do very little that time. Carnegie, good game, great design. That's one by Xavier Jorges and published by Qend Games. I don't know how to pronounce that really, but this was a fantastic game design. All right, and same both years. Number 6 is Wayfarers of the South Tigris. I believe I had this as number 3 earlier in the year. Played it a few more times now. Still love it. Great game. I highly recommend it. It's fairly complex to learn. I would say, as far as Garfield games go, this is designed by S.J. McDonald and Jim Phillips. This is Garfield Games. I would say, complexity-wise, this is probably, I want to say similar to Paladins, but I honestly think Paladins is a little bit, this might be similar to Viscounts as far as learning. It's Tableau Builder. You're going to be building up tableau of land cards, sea cards, space cards, and villagers that you tuck under the cards. They kind of accentuate or help you with your actions. And then there's a journal track that is kind of the game timer that people move down based on taking what's called a journal action. And it's vibrant, it's colorful, it's pretty, it's fun to play. It's definitely one of my it's among my favorite games, and it's definitely in my top 100. It's kind of waned on me just slightly over the year, but not. I don't have a particular reason for that, because it's not like it's not like I don't want to get it back to the table. I think it's probably just because when it was new and fun and I first played it, I was like happy to play it a billion times, and now it's like probably more in that like I want to play it sometimes, but other times I'm like, I'd rather play something else. But it is, it's all. Is it point salad? I don't know. It's not really a point salad, but it's very tough to kind of grasp, to hold, at least for me in my head, to grasp all the things that are going on the board and what other people are doing and figure out what is the most optimal action. That doesn't take any of the fun out of the game for me, because just trying to build my tableau in the best way I think is going to work is still quite fun in this game. Reminds me a little bit of Earth, where, in Earth you're building your own ecosystem, but you're kind of, what are other people doing? This one probably requires you to pay attention to what other people are doing a tad more, but it's there's so many different things you're trying to pull together that trying to make the best move each turn can be pretty challenging. So Wayfarers, good game. 60 to 90 minute play time is probably about right. So definitely closer to the 90 minutes, maybe even 120, depending on if you have a four players. You're probably looking at 120 for that game. But very nice. I love Garfield Games. They do a great job, and I'll talk. Well, Wayfarers is the first in the South Tigris trilogy, and then Scholars of the South Kingdom is coming out later this year, and I'm really between the two. I got to play test Scholars a little bit. Scholars I like even more. So Scholars has that potential to push into my top 10. Wayfarers I think is probably going to be closer in like top 50, but I don't know how close to the top 10 it gets. Scholars is just got some unique mechanisms that are pretty crafty. So, but that'll be on the 2023 list probably. All right, number 5 is War of the Ring, the card game. If you're not a Lord of the Rings fan, this may or may not be as enjoyable. So I do think the fact that I am a Lord of the Rings fan and I really like the lore that Tolkien has put into the Lord of the Rings, I can appreciate some of what the designer here, Ian Brody, has done with the game. This is published by Ares Games. It's pretty easy. I mean, I want to say it's like $35 to purchase, so pretty approachable price-wise. Comes in a nice box. There's a little tray for everything. Now, what I have found is like I've had to put rubber bands around the cards because they fall out of the tray and they get all mixed up whenever you set it at a, put it. If you don't lay it flat, everything's gonna fall out of those trays. But it is I think a good boiled down version of War of the Ring, the game, in a card game form to a degree. War of the Ring is a very different game. Dudes on a map. I've played it. Neat. In as much as I like the lore of War of the Rings, I'm not a huge fan of dudes on a map moving around trying to, do battles and armies and roll dice and stuff like that. There's probably a place for that, but I just don't enjoy it in the Lord of the Rings universe. So I do like this card game, and it's tactical. There's a lot of, especially, this is like Air, Land, and Sea, where the more you get to know the different cards that are in the deck, the more that can impact like how you go about playing the game. And as you play this game more and more, and other players with you are also playing, you're going to end up getting better and better at the game, and you can start doing some fun tactical things with your cards, and there's room for growth. I'm hoping they add, I think there is an expansion coming later this year, and I'm looking forward to that. I'd love to add it. Now, I think the decks that they have could use a couple more cards. For instance, like there's only one dwarf in the deck for the character that plays with the dwarf characters. There's Gimli, and then there's like his axe, and that's it. But I think there's room for more dwarves. I think there's some room for adding a few cards to the deck. You wouldn't want it to be huge. You don't want the decks to be much bigger than what they are. I'd say just a few things would be kind of neat. But because you want to be able to cycle through your deck. That's part of the game, is getting to cycle through your deck. But I think you could add cards and increase opportunities for cycling more, where you could get through your deck faster through various mechanics. So War of the Ring, the card game, is a fantastic game. I mean 1,248. Maybe that's about right, but I think this is a tad underrated, and I'd be curious. I wonder how other Lord of the Rings fans feel. I really like it. This captures that in a game form in a way that I really like, and I like it better than the living card game. I've played that a few times. Living card game's not bad, but nowhere near the kind of tactical fun that I think War of the Ring offers. And for the shadow player versus the free people's players, and I like that this offers a 4-player experience as opposed to the 2-player experience that War of the Ring the game offered. So there you go. That is my number 5. Did I have this on my list before? I didn't even have it on my list before. I hadn't played it before, so I guess I wasn't sure. All right. Number 4 is Blood on the Clock Tower. Now, I will caveat this choice at my number 4. This is not a game I own. This is not likely to be a game I'll ever own. It's not even the style of game that I particularly enjoy as much. I'm more introverted, so I'm not, I'm just not much into. It's not in my nature to go out and do a huge social game like this nearly as much. But I have played Blood on the Clock Tower a couple of times. I will probably play it again. I'll go to our local gaming pub and play it there, and it's fun every time. I'll even take people to go play this game because it's a great experience. And Blood on the Clock Tower is well designed. Now, I don't know how hard it is to be the game master, but this design by Stephen Medway clearly involves a lot of thought, time, and energy put into it. Pandemonium Institute, I don't know what else they produced, but they've done a good job getting this out there and providing lots of good material. I don't even know if there's expansions for this game, but I could see there being certainly opportunities for expansions. Clock Tower, there's some experimental characters, but that's all that is known. So, ranks 360, makes sense, should be highly ranked. I'd be kind of shocked if this doesn't end up in top 100 eventually, because it is just a fantastic experience. The only thing I can keep it maybe from ranking is it's the kind of game you go to a place to play, and it's not necessarily the kind of game you want to own. You just want to play it, experience it, but you don't necessarily want to own it because it's a lot of setup personally, and unless you're one of those folks that I want to set up a social experience at my house, it may not be for everybody as far as a game to put on the shelf and collect. But very, very, very fun social deduction game. All right. That is number 3. Kind of surprised this was ranked 951. Thought it would be ranked higher. This is I guess it's a party game. It feels like right on the edge, like it is a party game, but it almost feels like it's a party game that's also a gamer's game because it's got a little bit of everything in it. It got a little push your luck. It's got the betting. It's got the yelling, the screaming. Plays 2 to 9 players. The more players you have, the better this game is. This is if you've been to a con where you heard this played, you would hear people yelling and screaming next to you. Everybody's having a blast. You can use an app that does the race, but I'll be honest, my favorite thing to do with this game is to call the horse races. I love calling the horse race and then just making stuff up as I go. And the horses, I usually have somebody else rolling the dice for me, and then I'm moving the horses and I'm calling stuff out, and just, it's a blast. It's so much fun. And watching everybody place their bets and kind of figure out what to do. And as you go through each of the 4 races in a game, you're adding cards to your display and whatnot. It is a lot. It's probably, I as far as party games go, I think I'd be hard pressed not to have this as my top party game. I'd have to look hard at several other party games. Other people might choose Codenames, and Codenames is pretty good, but I'd say I like this one better than Codenames. Not a lot of downtime, lots of dynamic aspects to the game, and it's one of those, the more you play, the more you get used to the different kind of bets and stuff, the more you could probably get better at trying to place your place your bets more creatively. Yeah. Lunch. Time for a nap. Getting old. Ready, Set, Bet. That's by John D. Clare, and AEG produces this one. So maybe John D. Clare's best game. That's probably my opinion, but might be his best game. All right, number 2. This one is exactly the same as last year. Last year I had Ready, Set, Bet at 5, and so now it's moved up to 3. And Heat Pedal to the Metal was my number 2 last year and remains my number 2. A lot has been said about this game. I am still actively trying to pursue this game. I would love to get my hands on a copy, but every time I've looked for it, it's all sold out. I can't get it anywhere. I never kicked it because it was a racing game, and I had yet until I met Heat, I have never played a racing game that was like, oh neat, a racing game. I really want to play that. It's not that I don't. I've played racing games on video game consoles, and I've enjoyed them. But it's not like high on my list of game theme that I'm really pursuing. Heat Pedal to the Metal is a fantastic game design with the deck building, deck use, action selection. Very, very, very well designed. Asger Harding, Grenerud, and Daniel Skuld Peterson did a great job with this. The art is fantastic. Vincent Dutrait did the art. Many folks know or are big fans of Vincent Dutrait. They're going to probably have some expansions for this down the road, and I am anxious for either another Kickstarter or to get the whenever you do a second print run. Really want to see this. I kind of am hopeful or glad that I'll probably end up getting something in the second or maybe even the third print run, because my understanding is the rulebook's a little finicky on that first one, and they're going to correct that. So I look forward to getting hopefully an updated rulebook, and maybe that's why it's taken a long time to get this reprinted. But good game. I'm also trying to find it for. It's a $70 game, so it's on that. I would pay $70 for this, but I'm also always, trying to find a good deal on games, and sometimes the longer you wait, the more opportunity you have. Unfortunately, this is not one that people are selling on the secondary market very often, so it's not going to pop up just anywhere. One of the other things I like about Heat Pedal to the Metal that makes it special is that it's a 1 to 6 player game, which makes it more like you can get a lot of players around the table. And I love games that allow for 5, 6, 7 players, because sometimes that's what we end up with is 5, 6, 7 players, and it's like I don't necessarily want to play a party game every time that we have that player count. I'd like to play something that's a little more meaty, and Heat offers that. So great game. 30-60 minutes is about right. It takes about an hour to play this game. This is a very easy one to play, like 2 games in a row, even if you have 6 players. So that is my number 2 for both lists, and my number 1, Frosthaven. I just can't not give this number 1. I've played probably 12 or so scenarios, I think, in the Frosthaven series. A friend of mine owns this, and so we've been playing it. And Isaac Childress has just done a fantastic job. I'm sure he's got a huge team helping him out, Cellofair Games and all the folks involved with that. Frosthaven truly does improve on the Gloomhaven prototype. I call Gloomhaven a prototype because it was very good. It was a game changer literally in the game field, and I don't think anybody would have thought it would have been as good as it was when it first came out, but it was fantastic. I think the only reason Frosthaven is not ranked higher than it is because Gloomhaven already came out before it, and so you have a lot of that. Oh, we've seen that, is this really that different? Thing is, Frosthaven it's a lot more complex characters. There's a lot more complexity with what you're doing between the scenarios that you're playing, and it's a lot thinkier as far as my buddy I'm playing with. We take time between our scenarios to really think what kind of decisions do we want to make. Let's talk it out. What do we want to build this? How do we want to prepare for the city to be attacked? We know it's going to get attacked, but are we ready? And even the items, the loot deck, and there's a lot of little things in the game they just made better. They're just more complete. I feel like the storylines have a little bit more depth to them. This is more than just, neat fantasy in a box. And usually high fantasy, I'm kind of made up high fantasy is not that impressive to me, but they've got good artists that have done a good job on these games, and I half expect to see a Netflix series one day on Gloomhaven or Frosthaven or something like that. That's like a movie on these things, because there's enough depth of story to tell something fun and meaningful, and there's enough other things out there that probably wouldn't have as much depth as this would offer. So Frosthaven's great. If you haven't ever tried it and you've never tried Gloomhaven, I'd probably recommend Jaws of the Lion as a good hey, that's a good entry point. A lot lighter, walks you through stuff, gets you used to some of the mechanics. And then if you play Jaws of the Lion and you really like that, then try Gloomhaven or try Frosthaven. Now Gloomhaven 2nd edition is out, which looks really good. I'll probably wait for it to hit retail down the road. I still have my own copy of Gloomhaven that I want to play through. We're trying to do a 5-player campaign. I would like to finish that, which is probably going to take another 2 years. And then, maybe look at the 2nd edition and work with that. But we'll see. Very good game. Frosthaven was my number 1 earlier, so it remains the same. So let's talk runner-ups. Let's see. First runner-up, Clank Catacombs. I haven't actually gotten to play this, but I do really like Clank. It's probably in my top 50 or at least top 70. It's in my top 100. So Clank is a fun game. Catacombs, my understanding is, and I didn't actually watch a video before I'm saying this, so hopefully I'm not misrepresenting the game, but it is like you're revealing tiles as you go through the dungeon, and so you don't necessarily know where you're going to end up in the dungeon or what's going to be on a tile, and I really like that thematically for this game. It makes more sense than I can see everything. I like the idea of everything's revealed, and then as it's revealed, then you figure it out from there. So I think this is probably going to be ranking higher than Clank for me once I play it. I didn't quite edge into the games on my list, but it seems like it is one that could end up moving up the list after I've gotten a chance to get it to the table. I say get it to the table. I don't have this game, so I got to find somebody that owns it or get a copy at some point. But it's I don't know. It seems like I see it for sale now and again, so I think getting a copy of this is not going to be too terribly difficult. All right, next runner-up is Flamecraft. Again, another game I haven't played, but I really want to play. It's got pretty art, 1 to 5 players. I like that it goes up to the 5-player count. It looks fun. I can't tell if it's going to be kind of I'll play it and I'll be like, oh, that's neat. I don't know if I want to play it again, or if it's one that I'll want to play multiple times. It's hard to tell. I've watched a couple people play kind of from the side at BGG Con, and then I think another place I was out somewhere and I saw some folks playing it. So it's one that I can't quite get a beat on, but I've heard enough about and seen enough people playing it and enjoying it that I have a feeling it could edge into my top games maybe by next year for this year, but at this point, the jury is out. Another game that was on my top 10 list last year, it was my number 10, but now it is a runner-up, is Lacrimosa. This is one that is, it's actually on hold for me somewhere. I have it sitting in a bin. I'm waiting for it to be, to have enough games with whichever company I have it on hold with. I want to say Boardlandia or something, but I think this will come at the same time whenever the Arc Nova expansion comes out. I'll have this probably coming with it. But I played this at BGG Con this last year, and it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. I don't think it's going to be among my top 50 games, but it has eaten at my brain. I've wanted to play it again ever since I played it the first time because it has a good... the mechanic of whenever you get a card, like when you play a card, you either put it in the top and you take an action, or you put it in the bottom and you get resources, and then how you upgrade those cards is really intriguing. So very interesting game design, very unique theme around the idea of reformulating Mozart's whatever you call it, Lacrimosa, I guess his final work, that you're traveling around the game and trying to put that together with his family, meeting up with his mom and whatnot. It's kind of an odd theme, but it's really cool theme. I like it. So definitely want to get that to the table again in the coming year, but that makes my runner-up list. Then Fief. This is really just an abstract puzzle game, ranked 3,730. I'm really surprised it's so low. Honestly, I would have thought this would be higher. 2 to 5 players. It's fun. It's actually a well-designed game. I will likely grab a copy of this at some point, and very nearly bought one from somebody, but it's got pretty components. Oh, I lost my internet connection. Dang it. I forgot that I was not connected to the internet in my trailer. But Fief is a really good abstract puzzle. Think like Azul or things like that. It's got a little more poignant art than Azul, but it's roughly just a point puzzle you're trying to put together to see if you can score the most points. But pretty quick to play, and pretty fun dynamics with the gameplay when you're picking from some options, and you're gonna try maybe a little bit like there's a bit of Cascadia likeness to it, except you have a tighter board. So eventually when you get to the end of the game, it becomes like, okay, what am I going to mess up in order to score the most points somewhere else? If you're really lucky, you might be able to get your point board to work out 100%, but you're almost never going to score everything because you're trying to figure out what you can score the most, and then which things are you going to give up on. Then we have, lastly, runner-up, Libertalia Winds of the Galecrest, which was my number 8 last year. And it's great game, love it, enjoy playing it. Didn't think I was going to buy this game, but then after I played it the first time, I was like, oh, that's a neat game, I like it. Way more cutthroat than Vaalbara is, but I prefer Vaalbara partly because of that. I think it's not as cutthroat. It's a little more just gathering points. You're not doing bad things to other players. And Libertalia is a little bit more get you. You're actually trying to be a pirate. Beautiful art. Who is Lamaro Smith did a good job with this. I think this might be a slightly underrated game, honestly. I think it slips under the radar, but it's a good one. I like it. And then lastly, what else do we have? Oh, that's all my runner-ups. But what did I have on here last year that slipped? Well, I had Turing Machine at number 9. That slipped off the list. I still like Turing Machine. Still would love to get a copy of that eventually. It kind of borders on, is this an activity or is this a game? It's kind of a game, but it's also kind of a logic sleuthing activity. So it slipped off because I thought there were other things that were a little more gamey games that moved on. But Turing Machine is still very uniquely and well designed, and I like it. Sky Mines slipped off to the list. I thought I had it on the runner-up, but I guess I didn't. It probably would have been 16. Sky Mines is a great game by Alexander Pfister. I really like it. I wouldn't mind playing that again. Not sure if I want to copy or not. Maybe, but it's a good game. I definitely want to play it again. What else slipped off? Beer and Bread. Beer and Bread was the last one. It was my number 4 earlier in the year, but now it has slipped off. 2-player game. Still a neat game. After several plays of it now, the theme will probably make me want to keep it in my collection, but the mechanics are a little choppy, and it's not quite as smooth as I think a game needs to be to stay in a top 10. And now that I've played some other things, I just kind of fallen out. In fact, Beer and Bread is probably on, I don't even know if it's in my top 100. It might be. I can't remember if it was in there the last time, but it might be moving out. Still, I mean, I say top 100. Everything in my top 100 is a good game. So it's not like, I mean, that's not, it's now not, the more I play, the harder it is for things to move in and out of that list. But Beer and Bread is, it just lacks a smoothness to the gameplay that I think I'd like to see in games that are typically in my top 10 lists for a given year. However, that being said, triple use cards. Gotta love triple use cards. I mean, we all love double use cards. Or I think we do, most of us. Beer and Bread's got triple use cards, so I think that's a pretty neat dynamic. And the idea of I'm going to get my lowest of the 2 scores that I get is a really good tension in that game. So I don't want to downplay the game. It just fell off my list slightly. Probably really should have been a runner-up. I just didn't think to add it. But there you go. That is my updated top 10 games from 2022. On the radar coming up, I'm hoping to get a solo play of Darwin's Journey done. And I have no idea what's next. I might do an unboxing here of the Castles of Burgundy Special Edition. If it ever shows up on my doorstep, I'm still waiting for that to arrive. And who knows what else. There's probably some other things on the radar. But I've had a hard time just getting videos, getting the time to record. So I'm got some other things going on in life that are taking my time and attention. And so it's just kind of, you know, I get to them when I can. I am planning to do a drawing for any Patreons who are Patreons of the channel at the end of September. And if you are interested in being a Patreon, interested in supporting the channel financially, then please take a look. I'm not going to promise that my Patreon page is the best, but I will do a drawing at the end of September as long as I have a single Patreon. And guess what? If you're the only Patreon, you're going to win the drawing. Because I'm not counting myself. I am not going to be in the drawing. So that's there, and that's for all support levels, any kind of support at all. And again, if you like and subscribe to the channel, that is fantastic. I love it. Make comments if you have a comment on the games. I love to respond to comments when they pop up. I think a lot of folks don't comment on videos too much. At least that's been my perception. Maybe it seems like about 1 in 20 people ever comment on a video, but and maybe it's just, you know, even it's just like, hey, I agree with all your thoughts. That's fine. But if you have a game that you think snuck under the radar for a video like this, 2022, something that was maybe, because I tried to look through about 5 or 6 pages of games, and maybe I missed one and didn't get a chance to play it, that would have been really a top game on my list, and I just haven't played that game. But feel free to suggest it. We have a nice local store where sometimes people resell games, and sometimes those lower games tend to show up there. And if I find out one or get a good recommendation, I'll go pick it up if it's available. So thanks for joining Unraveled Game Thoughts today. Until next time, have a great weekend.